during this time, just to kind of help our entrepreneurs kind of cater their marketing to what we are currently experiencing. So we will do more of a marketing during Mayhem or pivoting during the pandemic series in the month of April. And you'll see that information come out later on this week, both through Hustle and the Small Business Center, and as well through Flywheel. So just wanted to make that change in our schedule for the month of April.
Sounds good.
All right, Mag. So it seems like the Facebook live keeps, I guess, backing out, and it won't let me continue to do it. Like it keeps shutting it off on its own.
That's a question for Animation. I don't know the Zoom world that well, but
What's up?
It's okay. If it's not working, it's fine. Animation, are you also an admin on the account right now?
Yeah, what do you need?
I'll just make, I don't know if it works that way. He can't seem to get the Facebook Live to stay working.
Stay on.
It was working a second ago.
Oh, it's saying, so, all right, so Zoom is saying that it's working, but I can't find the feed at all now.
I see it on the feed. It says it's live now.
All right, I mean, if it's live, we're good to go. You guys can just manage the comments for me, please. Is that all right?
Yep, that's good. We'll watch the comments.
All right, I appreciate it. Okay. All right, so how's everybody doing today? We're gonna get started. I don't want to hold you guys up. Okay, my name is EA Green. I'm the CEO and operator of Open Media Lab. Again, today is the fourth and final, I guess, session for marketing outside the box when you're marketing with podcasts, vlogs, and short form video. All right, just I guess by, people can look into the group chat, the Zoom chat. If you can let me know if there's anyone's first time in this session today, because this will allow me to know if I can move faster or slower, or that I need to go through the full thing. So if you guys just take a moment, just commenting if you have this is in fact your first time here. Okay. All right. Well, welcome, Liz. I appreciate you coming here today. All right. Awesome. Same. All right, Thad and Rachel. I really appreciate it. All right. So just I want to make sure. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we'll get started. All right. All right. So essentially, again, this is called marketing outside the box. All right. Just to get a little bit more about me, my name is EA Green. I've been producing podcasts and engineering podcasts for about 3 years now, and also producing visual content for about 2. All right. So ultimately, I believe, when it comes to your marketing, it really is the lifeblood of your business, right? So you really can't thrive unless you really get a chance to really share your story. All right. So just to kind of give you a little background, I literally started from the room that you're actually seeing me in right now, right? And my current studio is at 301 North Main Street in the Winston Tower, downtown Winston-Salem. All right. So just to kind of give you a little bit of the journey about where we kind of went and where we're at now. But, given with the new circumstances, I had to go back to my mobile office. All right, so what is Open Media Lab? Ultimately, we are a micro content agency, and we're going to really dive really deep into that here today, where micro content essentially is how you can, repurpose content that you already create in order to help promote yourself and your business. All right, we're also a content creation space. So with that, what that means is that someone who's watching here today, or someone who might come across this at a later date, you are able to come and rent the space by the hour in order to use, podcasting for up to 4 people. You can create vlogs and other short form video content. And also, and finally, we are a content network. So essentially, I produce other pieces of content for the sole purpose to really kind of that really is kind of inadvertent marketing for my space, right? So I might produce podcasts or other content with other producers or other creators in order to kind of get them involved in order for us to kind of like have different, a longer term solution. All right. All right. So over the last 4 weeks, essentially, this is a lot of the things that we've covered, right? We've essentially covered, marketing, expression, and how to essentially create your content in order to, do it successfully. And then now with today, we're really going to put a lot of these things into practice. All right. So some assumptions that I'm making is that you have general knowledge about making content. And if you do not, please feel free to put something in the comments, either if you're watching from the Facebook Live or if you're on the Zoom conference itself. I have people who are going to be here to be paying attention in order to help us out. All right. So again, I'm hoping that this can be a little bit more interactive, being that, if we were in person, but I did my best to make sure that we can continue that. And again, this is kind of like a choose your adventure. So as we kind of go along, based off of your, live feedback, I'm going to help, guide us through the rest of this conversation. And I really pride myself on transparency. So you'll, hear me be very, very clear and upfront, and I'll do almost anything but give you the secret sauce, the super secret sauce, like if it was like Coca-Cola or something like that. And finally, this is a no judge zone. And of course, and if everybody else who's been with me for the last 3 weeks, that you have to have fun and it's mandatory. All right. So with this week, basically the name of this session is called Attention, right? And that's what it's all about: attention, rolling out and rollouts, and the introduction of micro content. So ultimately, when you look at attention, right, and what we're kind of covering today, we'll discuss briefly what we discussed last class, right? And then today we're going to cover your content from a 10,000-foot overview, your rollout plan, and also the micro content philosophy. All right. So in last class, what we really discussed was that, we talked about storytelling and about how you can effectively do that and why it's so crucial when you're creating your content in order to really kind of have everything narrowed down and how you're going to execute it. All right. And also we talked about segues and how that is so important to get you from one portion of the conversation to the other. And then the last piece is creative execution. All right. So to continue going, right, ultimately marketing on the internet, right, it really feels like trying to get someone's attention on a crowded street. Can anyone else feel that way when it comes to marketing your business? You can, put a reaction, or you can go in the comments just to kind of like show if that's how you feel as well. Right. But ultimately, like, when it comes to that, it's not something that you can really do where you can say, you're going across a crowded street and then everyone is kind of like yelling at you when everyone else has their own thing that they want to kind of get done. All right. So the next portion, right, where we're going to kind of look at this is that essentially we're going to look at macro content creation. All right. So what that is, when you look at it from a 10,000-foot view, right, we're literally going to look at what we kind of talked about over the last 4 weeks. Right. And essentially, when you're rolling out and publishing your content, right, looking from the complete overview, you're going to plan and you're going to roll out your actual content. Right. So when you plan and roll out, you have the name of your podcast, your content, your concept, your format, themes, topics, and your launch strategy. And then if you can see, launching your flagship content, and I'll talk about what flagship means in a second, right? Essentially, this is what you're actually going to put out into the world for everyone to see. So that involves your intros, your formats, your storytelling, your segues, your sign off, your publishing, and your promotion. All right. So again, kind of keeping in mind what flagship means. Essentially, that is going to be the pillar piece of content that you're always going to refer everyone that is paying attention to you back to the longer piece. So that's what flagship means. And then if you can see from the 10,000-foot overview, literally continuous flagship publishing and micro content. That's what's going to keep you going. And if you can see that, in the grand scheme of things, this is what takes the most time, or this is what's going to take the most effort. A lot of times people think that's the things in the beginning, but those are just some small things that happen in order to kind of get you get the ball rolling. All right, let's see here. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I got everybody's comments. All right, looks like I got everybody. Okay. All right. So, and then with this covers your next theme, your topic, your flagship content, follow your cadence, you're creating your micro content and promotion. All right. So now we're going to talk about rolling out your content. So essentially what this looks like, and this is something that I've tested and proven, right? That I've used about 5 different times in terms of the last year, in terms of like being able to consistently go back and refine it in order to make things a little bit better. But basically, literally, like you can literally take this and copy and paste it. But I just really wanted to kind of show this based off, if you've been with us for the last 4 weeks, you will notice that the 4 different dots that we have on this timeline over 30 days is essentially what we've been talking about. So first, from day 0, from when you first have the bright idea to 3 or 4, you're talking about the 12 rule. This is about how you're going to get started, your concepts and your introductions. So this is basically, you're going to high level kind of say, hey, this is my business is about creating content. Just use me for example, right? So I knew that in order to get people to see this, I needed to create content in order to show what I could do. All right. So that's what the concept basically was, right? Going into the next step is when we have the session about the formula, where we talked about formats and topics. And essentially within that first week, we covered the first 2 weeks of the conversation that we had when it came to this session with marketing outside the box. All right. And then third, going into the second full week, right, we have dots. And if you remember, it means don't overthink stuff. All right. Don't be nasty. Don't be, kind of, kind of thrown off by that. And then the last one essentially is attention. And that's rollouts and the introduction of micro content, which essentially is day 15 to day 30. So if we were working together and, you essentially hired us in order to help you out to roll out your content, we would have covered the last 4 weeks of content all within, and get you ready within the first 30 days. All right. So kind of looking at the rollout cycle. All right. And, essentially at day 0, that's what the initial meeting or that pre-production technically takes place. So that's if you're going to be by yourself and you're working with another creator, or if you have a team that you're going to be working with together in order to make this happen, that's where you're going to kind of cover a lot of the, the 12 rule and, and the formula in those particular pieces, right? So going through within the 30 days, again, what you're going to record now is what I call an intro minisode, right? And I'll kind of explain what that is. So what a minisode is basically, if you know that 30 days from now, you plan on releasing a piece of content in terms of something that you're going to be putting out on a regular basis, right? If you're going to do a podcast and or a vlog, right? And what we're going to assume is that you're going to do what I would call a visual podcast. So let's make that assumption. So visual podcast, vlog, and short form video is all kind of interchangeable. But what that is essentially is a 5 to 10 minute video, or only audio, where you're basically going to record what your actual show is about. All right. So now what that means is that, all right, for me, and this is gonna be something that we're gonna cover later on, Open Up Shop was the name of my podcast, right? It's still here. But what we did, right, is that my very first episode, technically I said, hey, if we're gonna release 30 days from now, later on, like we essentially recorded it ahead of time in order to make sure that the flow of the cycle went through perfectly. All right, so once you record your intro minisode, right, then you're gonna go on your promo, your press tour. So within the first 14 days, I'm hoping that you are, you're multitasking and you're getting in contact with everybody who is a leader in your space, or someone that who has a podcast, has a vlog, has some short form video, and you're asking them if you can go on their show or on their piece of content in order to share some value to their listeners. So what that does is literally is borrowing that, that human capital, that capital of, hey, the I guess what they've built with their audiences over their time when they're creating their content. You're essentially gonna kind of ride those coattails essentially in order to kind of get some more attention on what you have coming out. All right. And then the next portion is what I call, and this is what I use for every single piece of content that we roll out, is the top 10 countdown content. All right, so this is something I will show you later on in the, in the session. But what this is essentially is a piece of content that you are going to create that really shows, really kind of shows off what you know and what you'll be kind of sharing throughout your content flowing out, if it's your podcast or your vlog or your visual podcast. All right. So when you're actually going through your top 10, right, essentially that's going to be given out during those last 2 weeks of those 30 days. So essentially your top 10, what you'll do is, say if you're going to start releasing them on a Monday, you take a Sunday afternoon and you release an intro video letting people know that you're going to be releasing a top 10 based off of whatever you decide you want it to be about. All right. And then essentially for the next 10 business days, you will release one piece of the countdown every single day for those next 10 business days. Right. So basically on the 11th day, then your piece of content or your video or your vlog should be out and ready to go. Right. So during this top 10, right, we know this is kind of all overlapping. Right now, you're going to release that intro minisode. Right. So what I normally do is that on the day of the, if you're counting down, so on the day that you release number 5, right, that's when I release the minisode as well. Right. And I create another piece of video that really says, hey, this is something that is coming out and you should listen to it today. Right. So now if you're looking at it, when you have been setting up the scene about you rolling out and you counting down for your big debut, this is what we call surprise and delight. So now if I have your attention for the first 5 days and you know that, from the, human attention span that we don't have that much time, right? If they've been following you, if they will be surprised and delighted that, hey, like there's something that is ready to listen to today, right? So this is something different than what your first official episode would be. So say if your first official episode is 30 minutes to 45, this is something that's very different than, just releasing that minisode, right? So what this does when you actually create your minisode and release it is that when you, if you were in the last class, when we talked about how you need to distribute your actual pieces of content, right? This is for podcasts in particular, right? Essentially, the reason why you want to release it almost a week before your final actual release date is that you have to submit it to your different host sites in order for people to actually listen to it widespread the day that you say that you're going to release your first episode. So let me kind of repeat that. If you know in the next 10 days that your episode is going to come out, essentially what you have to do on day 5 is that you release your minisode. And then within the next couple of days, you're then submitting your RSS feeds and different things of that nature to Apple Podcasts, to Google Podcasts, to Google Play, to Spotify, right? So that hopefully by the time, and in most times, because it depends on like if you fill out everything correctly, right? I've never had, any issues with doing this. But when you submit everything correctly, by the time the next 5 days go by, you will have a podcast submitted and ready for full distribution when your full podcast comes out, right? And this really kind of goes synonymous, even if you are doing only video, because when we talk about micro content, you'll see how, even though you might not have to do that for YouTube, it is still very crucial in order to do this, in order to make sure that you can essentially launch when you said that you're going to launch. All right, next, right? After those, 5, from counting from number 5 to number 1, and then the day that you're going to release, you're going to record and release your first episode. So when you have that and you have it submitted, stuff like SoundCloud or, Transistor is a host that I use, that basically, once you release it on that day that you say you're going to release it, they will automatically distribute it to everywhere that you submit it for your podcast or your vlogs to be distributed at. All right. And then the last portion is promotion. And this is where a lot of the, once you release your episode and you start recording it and you kind of start cycling through and you're looking at promotion here where my marker is, essentially you're going to kind of keep rotating within this space, right? Unless you start looking at another rollout or something else that you really want to kind of give. All right, so I know we talked about a lot in this, but I want to take a moment to see if there's any questions so far. Thank you, Ellen Younger, for the feedback. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm assuming there's no questions. We'll kind of go back into it later if you do have questions again. All right, and again, you can use the chat, or if you have a question, it makes it easier. You can just chime in, unmute yourself and ask the question, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be pretty good for everyone to really kind of hear. But just, let me know and just stop me. All right, so when you're looking at this, right, and you're doing your rollout, essentially timing is everything. All right, so this is just a little gift that I wanted to share with you guys. If you know who Judge Judy is, essentially, like, timing is everything when it comes to this, right? So you really have to make sure that when you are doing this, that you need to take a look at everything else that's happening. All right, so some things that I do want to call as an example is that, let's say if you are in the business of giving love advice, right? And you have a show that's going to be giving love advice, and you're going to be talking to couples or different things of that nature, right? When you are doing stuff like your press tour, right, your promo, your press tour, that is something that you want to make sure that you're doing things that are relevant to what your brand or what your business is in business of doing. So let's say, for instance, for this month, in the month of March, if you knew that you were going to release today, 30 days ago, right? Doing things throughout the month, and when you're promoting it and referencing, when you're kind of looking at, Women's History Month, is perfect. It is something that is hyper relevant, and it's not something that you will really kind of help you guide your theme through the topics that you might talk about. Or if you're in the business of selling hand sanitizer or toilet paper, now is the perfect time to really kind of say how your stuff is a little bit better than everybody else's. All right. So just as an example of something that I did in terms of my rollout for when I did Open Up Shop, the podcast, right? If you kind of look, what you're seeing here is essentially my Instagram feed. All right. So what I did last year when I released my podcast, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, there was a video that I want to show you, right, that essentially kind of covers what we talked about. Hey guys, my name is Ian. I'm here to let you know that I'm launching Open Up Shop, the podcast. This podcast is going to document the journey that I'm taking to launch Open Shop, the small business e-commerce platform. Open Up Shop launches February 25th. And in order to count that down, I'm going to share with you the top 10 excuses that I've used that prevented me from getting started. And to be honest, you've probably used them too. So keep a lookout on my page where I'm going to share those with you. Keep in mind, Open Up Shop podcast, February 25th. Let's just get started. Hey guys. All right. So I hope that you guys were able to hear that. All right. So, I can always send you guys the link of what I did, but that essentially, that bottom right square right here that I have highlighted, this is essentially something that I use in order to help me announce that I was going to be coming out with a podcast. The next portion here was actually something that I used to help promote it even more. And I created a contest, right? So essentially what I did, there's a resource out there that you can do a digital contest where people, if they, follow you on Facebook or Twitter or share something or like something, they get points in order to actually have something that they can roll out or something that they can win at the end when you want to actually give those things out. So for instance, what I gave out was 2 $25 gift cards to the top winners that shared everything, right? And that's just something that really kind of just takes the social proof that, people, that $25, that's $25 that you didn't have. And that's definitely something that you can use that can really kind of help you out and running stuff out. So to kind of go through, so you see that I have, 10, 9, 8, and 7, and 6, right? And then the day that I released the 5th what I did is I announced that, hey, there is something that's out right now that you can actually go to. So again, not knowing what I'm going to do or somebody's going to do, for when you actually roll yours out, essentially this is the perfect time, right? In order to kind of show like, hey, this is what's happening. And then you got to go through year 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And essentially this is me announcing, hey, that the episode is out. And then this is me showing that this is the people who actually won the contest. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so the last thing I really want to share with this is that with these, right, you can essentially rinse and repeat. This is something that is evergreen that I believe that, you can essentially, bet your bottom dollar to, especially if you already have, some type of marketing that you've already been doing already, right? So this would be a definitely complete change of pace for what people may be looking into. And now there's way more resources that you can use in order to share these things, such as Instagram stories, Facebook stories, so on and so forth. Or if you have some, video is highly utilized and is highly engaging on things like LinkedIn and YouTube. So, but particularly when I look at the rollout, what I normally do is I normally stick to the social media platform that I believe I'm going to use the most. So for what I did, I didn't create a separate account for that podcast. I just used my personal, in terms of for my personal brand, because I knew it was something that I was going to be pushing for myself, and that it was going to kind of help establish me as a a credible source and as a leader within my community. All right. So next, we're gonna go into is micro content creation. But before we do that, do we have any questions in the Zoom chat or the Facebook? Are there any questions? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Eric, this is Alan. There are some people who had some trouble logging in, so they may be joining us late or watching on Facebook Live.
Got it. I understand. No problem. Hi, everybody who joined in. All right, so Leroy asked, so you created, I guess, 2 brands, one for my business and one for yourself. Yes, so what I did, particularly for my podcast that I use, right? And again, this was really early in me kind of starting up and before I really kind of get in heavy with doing video content. So I particularly did a podcast in like for this particular case, right? But as time's going along and you've acquiring new tools and resources, I started to do these different things. So what I did for me in particular is that this podcast was helping me promote an application that I was creating called Open Shop, which was a small business marketplace. So essentially I had a Open Shop, at name, and I acquired all those on all the different pages. That's definitely something that I would suggest, even if that's something that you're not going to do. If you're not going to use it, you never know when you might. So still acquire all those at names so that when you actually decide to use it, you already own it and there's no issues at all. Right. But what I knew what I was going to do for the Open Shop, at pages or Instagram pages and Facebook pages is that I wanted to make sure that the branding and all the things that were coming from that page were talking about the application itself. Right. So that's why I felt like I wanted to keep all that stuff over there. And then when, for me, I use my personal page to push the podcast because it was about my experiences and about me, the person, establishing me as a credible source and as a leader within that space. So I wanted to use that in particular to make sure that people knew that if, I noticed that when I was, going around, all these different festivals and getting tables and things of that nature, that people were signing up and giving me their email because they liked what I had to say. They didn't speak to this application. Like they saw me as the brand. So I knew that I needed to take, the step forward in order to make that move. So Leroy, I really hope that helps. But when I kind of started rolling out these different things, right, and I started promoting it, what I did do is cross promotion, right? So what happened is that I knew that a lot of the application's Instagram page was about what the application can do for you. And then the podcast was about my experiences, about what we're going to bring to the table. But all I did was take, pieces from one and then put it on mine, and then pieces from my page and put it on the business page as well. So I would say case by case basis, we can talk about it later and what that can really look like and what might be the best fit for you. So I hope that answers your question. All right.
It did.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Sorry, 1 second. I'm noticing the Facebook Live only shows. Okay.
No, there aren't any questions on the Facebook Live. We're good.
All right. It's only showing your name, Max. That's why I was kind of concerned.
I think you're in the wrong live probably, but we're good. I'm watching it.
All right. Okay. No problem. All right. So now we're going to get into micro content. I don't think there's any more questions. All right. But yeah. So when you're looking at micro content, right, looking at the grand scheme of things, right, everybody wants to have that dream team, right? Everyone has a designer, a copywriter, social media expert. But I mean, as you guys all know, I'm sure that this is just not the case, right? Most times when you're marketing your business, like it's going to be you. It's going to be you only. So what micro content really kind of looks at is how can you use the same effort and the same resources and the same time that you're investing in making this grand piece of content that you're going to share, and make sure that it can be used consistently in a more evergreen way. All right. So, looking at it from, this stat from salesforce.com, it takes about 6 to 8 touches to generate a viable sales lead. And I'm assuming, making a grand assumption that if you're going to using content to market your business, right, the basic thing that you actually want to acquire is an actual lead. And that can be an email address, it can be a business card, it can be a phone number, whatever you decide to really get things establishing for your funnel, right? And kind of the best way I can really show, I'm hoping that you guys can see this. All right, this is something I kind of drew up before, but essentially when you're looking at like how your different efforts, right? When you have your social media and you have original content and things of that nature, essentially what you want is a way to be able to kind of grab those emails and place them into a funnel so that you can essentially use your newsletter in order to
We had
really
trouble seeing that, Eric.
All right, I will.
It's okay if it's too hard, but we had trouble seeing it.
All right, so essentially, do people know what a sales funnel is? So let me ask that question.
Yes. Well, some of us might.
All right. Okay. So, essentially, that's what when I using this in the grand scheme, that's what actually, this stuff is actually going to be used for. All right. So next, so a lot of times when, people, don't make marketing a priority, these are just some of the things that, some of the pitfalls that a lot of people actually use, right? So this pizza right here on the top, right, believe it or not, is actually a post that Domino's Pizza had used on their Instagram, right? So we know that, even though I know there's the whole thing about people saying that, pizza may taste like cardboard or might be fake and stuff like that, but this doesn't really help at all, right? And then you have different things like, the puppet showing like, for open houses and stuff like that, and how this man and Ken and Chuck are a power team, and they're essentially voted 8th best in their, in their area. And essentially when, marketing isn't a priority, one of the biggest pitfalls that people do is that they actually try to sell before they actually provide value. So that's like that, that scheming, car salesman that's literally asking you, can you buy, before they even tell you what happens in the car. Does any salesman that's on the Facebook or the Zoom not talking about you though? And then the last piece is generic photos versus real photos. Consumers are very smart, point blank period. They will be able to know if you're using real photos versus generic photos, right? And what this essentially does is that, it doesn't really show any authenticity. And it's very crucial in order to do this, in order to make sure that you can, make the biggest impact that you can. All right. So, when we're looking at this again, going in a grand scheme of what we talked about, right? This is about, curating content versus documenting content. And when you curate content, it's a real heavy lift. It requires time, planning, and essentially it gambles with relevancy because you're spending so much time to try to get everything together and then release it out into the world where you actually might lose your chance to really kind of capitalize on these moments. For instance, like if you are able to create a digital side of marketing for your business, now is the crucial time to not curate content. This is the time where you need to be showing that you are, that we're all in this together and that we're all working together in order to make this move forward and, doing gift cards, so on and so forth. All right. All right. And versus documenting content. All right. So this is an example of, Venture Cafe Winston-Salem, who is a client of the Open Media Lab, where essentially, if you've, have seen that twice a week, Venture Cafe releases a newsletter, right? And in the beginning, like I noticed when I approached them that, if you've been to a Venture Cafe, Karen's energy is infectious. She's very, personable, very funny, very eccentric, very expressive, right? And what I realized was that in their newsletter, she would have some really big thought pieces and stuff that was really relevant and things that really needed to be seen. But like anybody else knows, when you get that text message and it's super long, you might just respond back, okay. Or you might see that email and it's long and you might just, archive it. You just might, kind of just leave it unread. So what we decided to do was create a visual newsletter that shows at the very top of the newsletter when you open it, that really kind of helps Karen express and show and, provide, some more expertise in terms of what the themes are for Venture Cafe for that week, for that month, so on and so forth. All right, so when you look at curating versus documenting content, essentially what this looks like is essentially curating is like trying to, get a big fish on your own, with this itty bitty, fishing pole, versus documenting content is like casting a wide net in order to make sure you can get those 6 to 8 touches in order to generate that lead. So what that looks like, again, is the flagship and micro content model, that we use at the Open Media Lab. All right, so what this does, again, there's 3 portions of this strategy and this execution. Essentially what happens is that you create a flagship piece of content, right? And that is a visual podcast, a vlog, or short form video that really kind of shows what you can really do, right? And really helps, covers your concept and the topics in order to show and create more credibility with your audience, right? So let's say that is an hour. Right. Then next, what we do with micro content development is that you take that whole hour worth of, or half hour or however long worth of video or audio, and then you break it up into smaller pieces, right, in order to distribute throughout your different social media channels or your online channels in order to help promote the bigger idea. So if you're looking at this, it's almost like an upside down or almost like a funnel in itself, right, where the flagship content is the longer piece of content. But micro content has a lot of smaller pieces that really kind of go and deal with that, right? So, within that, you might have 15 to 2-minute videos. You might have pictures with quotes, and other, specific, medium specific content, such as stories and boomerangs and so on and so forth. And then the third portion is that you repurpose the micro content. So if you, based off of what we talked about over the last 4 weeks, that I've really been promoting you documenting things that you're going through in order to share those things, in order to help provide a little bit more character and a little bit more authenticity to your story, right? So if I promoted something, let's say if I had a a soap company, right? And I knew, like, I made a piece of content 10 months ago that basically talked about why my my soap is the best soap that's out there, right? It's, antibacterial and antiviral, all those good things. It kills 100% worth of germs, right? If I made that 10 months ago during this actual strategy, right, now it is essentially relevant again, because we know that the different themes that are taking place today that, helping promote those different things that you have for your business, this just makes sense in order to make sure you put it back in the eye. So what might happen is that, let's say if we have this video and, when you guys start commenting, and I'm going to just pick on Leroy for a second, when he asked the question about if you use 2 brands for your business and for yourself, right? The explanation that I gave for that, right? This will be a part of the full 1 hour experience that we're having here today. But later on, I can take that 1 to 2 minutes of video that we had when I explained it, and I can now release it by itself. And then now the whole point is that you have this 1 to 2 minute video. Hopefully, as someone who's new to my content will find it very useful, and then say, all right, I want to watch the full video. So now they're going to be referring them back to what the top of the pyramid, right? And essentially, if you now go through that 1 to 2 minute worth of video and you like something in that, I can now repurpose it and take that out of that piece of video and make a quote or make a vlog or, or a GIF or something like that. So when you're looking at the flagship and micro content model, right? So if you, let's say for instance, if we made the assumption that you're going to make a visual podcast or a vlog, essentially you have an hour worth of video. If you strip the audio from the video, it is now a podcast. Believe it or not, a podcast is just audio that you can watch on, that you can listen to online. So essentially, when you are recording a visual, like something that's visual, and you know that you are going to place it as a podcast later, you have to be very very descriptive, right? In terms of how you are explaining things, knowing that, and with the intention that you're going to give it to someone, a medium later, where they're only going to be able to hear you. Because if I'm starting pointing at things and things of that nature, and I'm making sounds and stuff like that, it's going to turn off the listener if you decide to also use it as a podcast. Again, you can take some of the bigger portion of the video, make 15-second clips, 30-second clips, 2-minute clips, all long, so on and so forth. Or if you're covering different topics within your 30 minutes or your hour, you can then make it into minisodes, right? Where you now have the full hour. Now you're breaking it up into 10-minute pieces, 5-minute pieces, 8-minute pieces, whatever is relevant to what you're creating. Creating things like stories, making sure that, Facebook stories and Instagram stories that, normally when you're actually scrolling through your actual phone, and if you notice a lot of times with IGTV, what you'll notice is that you'll see captions on top or on bottom of your video, right? And if you were with us from the very first, you know that 80% of people, who watch these videos, listen and watch them on mute. Right, so putting captions and different things of that nature on your videos really kind of help promote your things as well. And something else I really want to kind of show is that when you are creating content, and you're creating micro content in particular, it is very crucial to not be pigeonholed or be typecast into one spot. So I've used in the past that when I first got on Instagram, I was the inspirational guy. I was the guy that was always talking about, like, do this and you'll be great, or do that and you'll be great. And what happens is that people stop liking it, because it's like, if you didn't need to be inspired today, it was not relevant to you, my potential viewer. So what I like to say is that when you are creating your content, your micro content, you have to have a balance between things that are impactful and things that are relatable. And relatable pieces of content are things such as memes, quotes, and GIFs. And yes, I said GIFs, not GIFs. All right. So when you're creating your content, some places where it'll be effective are places like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and LinkedIn. All right, and this is something that's actually something that I'm going to show you. That's an actual piece of content that we created. That's a flagship piece of content.
What's the one word that distinguishes a wantrepreneur from an entrepreneur? Today, we're going to talk about the word action. Hi, I'm Karen Barnes, Executive Director of Venture Cafe Winston-Salem, and we've so far been talking about some of the principles that make up the entrepreneurial mindset. I want to talk to you about the second one, action. Why is it that it's so important? If you're already an entrepreneur, you know the answer to that. But if you're thinking about what's a side hustle that I can create, what's a way that I can consider going into a business, the one word that you have to keep pushing on yourself is action.
All right. So just sure, that was a 3-minute video. If once you submit your email to Hustle, you know, I'll actually be sending this full document, you know, to them in order for them to share, and you'll be able to actually go and watch this in its full entirety. All right, so again, that is just something that we use for, you know, the flagship piece of content. And then when we look at this, right, some examples of micro content is something that you know, this thing right here on the left-hand side, this is something that what a story might look like, or something that it might look like for IGTV, right? So I know that this healthy boundaries are crucial piece of content was something that we created for IGTV. And then how this is really practical is that when you actually were on your Instagram feed and you're scrolling down, and you know, before you're even in IGTV, what you would see is everything above the logo. So you will literally see healthy boundaries are crucial. And that's something that is a call to action, or something that's going to be like a hook in order to try to get your attention, in order to get you to stop scrolling for a moment and press play in order to kind of hear this, right? Because if you believe that healthy boundaries are crucial, you might give this video a chance to actually open up and listen to it. And then when you actually open up the full video and to watch it on IGTV, then you would see the actual branding and stuff like that in order to make sure that you knew that it was from Venture Cafe. All right, so another piece that was, you know, kind of more on the relatable side is if you look on the top right, if you see, hey, oh, is this that thing on? This is something that, you know, just being silly in, you know, while recording, while waiting to, you know, do the next segment, you know, it's something that just a hope that you had to kind of get that quick giggle, that quick laugh. And this was actually a gift that we created. Some other micro pieces of content, this on the bottom in the middle is the Open Media Lab. This is, you know, we have some lights that I'm actually using in here that I took home that, you know, kind of create the light show and be able to create different atmospheres while you're recording. And these two videos here are actually some of the promo material that I've used for the Open Sky series, which is some of that content that I mentioned that we create as a, you know, organization as a whole. All right, so some resources that you can use to make micro content easier. Best things, easiest things, Canva. I believe Canva is well worth paying for the full $12 a month, because you're able to put your logos in there, different things of that nature. And the fact that it's omnipresent, you can start on your computer, end on your phone, or start on your phone, end on your computer. It just makes it just a lot of like quick out of the box related type of content. And then now what they allow you to do is that you can create content for the different mediums all within that app. So, you know, you can now create video content through Canva, where normally it was about just like kind of posters and things of that nature, right? There are different apps and different things that are native to your actual phone. So there are GIF makers, there are, you know, meme makers, there are other different apps that you can use. You know, I'm kind of, you know, slided more towards iPhone, but, you know, no harm, no foul. And something that's rather new, and believe it or not, that, you know, I'm going to be honest and transparent that I have been paying attention to them, but I have not joined it yet, is that TikTok is an application that is very, very popular, and it makes it very, very easy for you to really kind of create relatable content that can essentially be seen by a ton of people fairly quickly, right? So this is definitely something where a lot of attention is at, and something that you should definitely keep an eye on.
I feel the pressure to get a TikTok.
Yes, I do too, believe it or not. And I'm probably going to have it by the end of this week, believe it or not.
Ugh.
But hold on, I think we have a question. Okay, all right. All right, and then something that's a little bit more on the paid side. Again, Canva can be free. Your phone, TikTok is free. But something more on the paid side is the Adobe Suite. something that I stand by, different things that you can essentially purchase. I think they just had a sale for $30 a month and you get access to the full Adobe suite, right? And there's tons of YouTube videos that you can watch that will help you step by step to kind of get this stuff done. Again, 2 to 3 years of experience in terms of the different aspects of my business that I have. And essentially, I'm all self-taught by YouTube University. I'm a proud graduate. All right. And then the best option, of course, if you want to be able to create micro content and flagship content, is the Open Media Lab located at 301 North Main Street and the Winston Tower. All right. So again, kind of wrap things up. Again, this is something that you really have to kind of look at is how do you get someone's attention in a crowded street, right? And I truly believe that when you are a business owner or you're an entrepreneur or you're trying to start a brand, if you know that you primarily in business to sell what you sell, that good or that service, all right, you do not have a ton of time in order to make sure that you can kind of do these other things. So when you have the flagship and micro content philosophy or that model, essentially what that looks like is investing, you can invest an hour a week of actually, creating the content itself, and then, spend maybe 2 to 3 more hours being able, and just depending on what you're looking to do, all right, where you can essentially an hour a day where you can, be able to create your flagship content and be able to create the micro pieces of content that goes along with it. And then after you post those evergreen, and I really kind of, emphasize on evergreen pieces of content, once people start to engage with it on the different social media platforms, because again, now you have their attention based off the content, this beautiful content that you've been setting out to create. Now that you have their attention, you have to make sure that whatever is relevant to them might be relevant to others. So if I know one piece that, when Magali talked about TikTok a couple of minutes ago, again, since I know that it's something that might be relevant to some other people, I'm going to take that piece of this video that I've been recording, because the way you see me, I'm recording this, and I'm going to take that and I might use it for my social media later on today or later on, a year from now, whenever, because we're not necessarily talking about something like, hey, today, March 25th, this is what we're talking about. So with that being said, kind of moving forward, and if you're kind of thinking about what rollouts and things of that nature, one thing I do want to share is that my podcast, Open Up Shop, will be coming back out starting next Wednesday. All right, so I appreciate it. So with this being said, I know we are, we're all kind of at home, making sure that we're being safe and, make sure that we can kind of get through this hard time together. I'll be doing remote podcasts, remote video podcasts, where I'll be calling in through Zoom and stuff of that nature with different entrepreneurs throughout the city, throughout the triad, or whoever, is willing to speak with me in regards to, the different stories about their business and about different things that they might need help with. So we will be starting next Wednesday, and I have the goal in being able to release it 3 times a week until we are back, fully back to normal, business as usual. So, if you are interested in order to kind of submit, in order to be interviewed for Open Up Shop, the podcast, make sure you reach out to me after this in order to get that done. All right. So that being said, if you've been with me for the last 4 weeks, we have a raffle for a full, for a full pilot episode for your actual piece of content that you've been wanting to create. So this is something that you've been with me for the last 4 weeks, you have an idea and you know what you want to do, right? So on Thursday, make sure you pay attention to Hustle at 12 p.m. We will be announcing the winner, right? I'll be taking the raffles from based off of you've been involved in this class. And that even goes for the people that are on the Facebook Live as well. Well, this class and all the other 3 classes will basically be drafting and picking out someone to create their content. And we can either do it remotely, the way that we're here right now, or we can wait until everything is back to normal and we'll get you set up. And if you are a winner and you already have content that's out, we can discuss what the equivalent with that will be. But we have 3 more minutes. I'm open for any questions. Let me know what you got.
You have a question from Rick Jordan in the chat.
All right. So All right, so Rick Jordan asked, what was the countdown tool and app that I used? Okay, so let me go back to that. Just so you guys can see what he was kind of speaking about. All right, so this is what he was referring to. Okay, so is it Rick? Right, Rick. All right, so what I did, believe it or not, this was all done manually, like I'm using quotes, manually, right? Where essentially what I did was that I took a day, not necessarily a full day. I took a couple of hours where essentially I already drafted up what my top 10 reasons that, kind of prevented me from getting started. And maybe you have too, is that I kind of took a moment. I had a green screen, my iPhone that you see right here, right? And one ring light. So that's maybe, given the phone aside, it was maybe $100, $120, maybe, don't quote me on that. Basically what I did was we sat in front of it, my fiance pressed record, and I went through all 10 pieces all in a row, right? I had what they were, what that meant, spent no more than 20, 30 seconds on each, right? Recorded them all, back to back, all within that hour time frame. And then what I did was then I took that, used, my video editor and broke it down into pieces, right? So that I was able to kind of set all that stuff up ahead of time, and then used a program called Hootsuite, which is something that I'm sure you guys maybe heard before. And there are other schedulers that you can use to help promote and push video. Once I created everything, I set everything up for the time to go release. I believe it was like 9 a.m. every single day for those 10 business days. And I just sat there and waited and for people to comment, made sure I engaged with them and things of that nature in order to kind of keep moving, right? So, but what you kind of see here, this is my actual Instagram feed itself. So this is the Instagram that my Instagram, if you kind of scroll down at EA the Exec on all platforms, you'll see all these pieces of content together. All right, but something that I kind of use to kind of almost like as a part of the rollout tool, and I can send an email out. I believe it's called kingsumoapp.com, which was basically an online app that I used to create an online contest where people can essentially raffle by doing different actions in order to gain entries for a $25 gift card that I was going to be sending them. And what I did for that is that when I sent it to them, I didn't cop out and I didn't do an online gift card. I bought the gift card, went to my local pharmacy, got a card, wrote a handwritten note, thanking them, mailed it out, right? And the thing is, most people, especially in the digital age, they will be very used to just you kind of like, hey, here's my email, send me the gift card. They really appreciated having the card sent to them that they were able to use and and actually be able to read. And I'm sure maybe kept it for a day or two, but I was able to make a lasting impression, and I was actually able to get leads from those. So I was actually able to to get a client out of that where they kind of came back and essentially used that $25 gift card on me. So, it all kind of pans itself out. And then also in the grand scheme of things with that app as well, is that with everyone who submits to be a part of that contest, they actually allow you to keep the emails itself. So once they submit and they, get more entries, it is also now a lead generating tool that you can use too.
Two quick things, Eric. You mentioned that you'll be doing your podcast and that, if they're interested in being a part of that throughout, as we go through this time, to submit an application or to let you know of their interest after this, I guess via email.
Yes.
Is that going to be something you do with them virtually, or will they be expected to come to the studio?
No, so that will be completely virtual. So I will be using Zoom for every single podcast, podcast episode. So, if you are, are chosen to be a part of it, make sure you wear your best, from the waist up, so that when I'm actually going to record it, and I'm hoping that's like a given based off of what we have in here today, that we'll be recording it, having recording that conversation, and almost kind of like treating it almost like in a radio format where I'm gonna start off with 3 times a week So basically it'll be next Wednesday and Friday, and then it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday going from there. So no, you're not expected to leave your home. All you will really need is I would prefer a laptop with, and headphones that have a microphone attached to it, which most of us have. And if not, you can get one for cheap, $5 from like a Five Below, or order it, from Amazon.com. But, I guess I will say that a purchase isn't necessary, but I hope that, most people might have those tools available to them.
Thank you. And then with whomever win the raffle, is there a time limit on that? And then addition to that question is, are there opportunities for any of the entrepreneurs on the call with their businesses to utilize your services right now during this time, to maybe have like a 15 to 30-minute one-on-one with you to see the opportunity, and what's the best way that they can reach out to you to see if there's a benefit for them and their business utilizing Open Media Lab during this pandemic?
Yes. All right. So, Mags, thank you for that. If I missed something, make sure you just kind of like double back and I cover that. So you are still able to reach me at, you can use at EA the exec on any platform. So let me write that down. See here. So you have at EA the exec or at Open Media Lab. I'm writing it in the chat for everyone, and you can go to openmedialab.com. Excuse me. openmedialab.com, right? And you can essentially still you can purchase a gift card or a gift certificate that you can use either today if you want to use it for a like a I guess like an online podcast, if you want to kind of create your own podcast episodes, or if you want to speak with me in order to for a consultation on your content. I will be having office hours, digital office hours, where I'll be, available, for an hour or so, or a couple hours a week, where you can essentially book a 30-minute Zoom session with me. And, we'll go high level on the content, or basically on the idea that you have, and essentially what, what I can kind of help do for you, with Open Media Lab and stuff like that. Let's see. Did I miss something, Max?
Nope. Thank you so much, Eric. I want to thank everybody. Sorry to cut you off, Eric. I know we're a little over time, so I want to go ahead and end this session if that's okay with you.
Yep. And I will just kind of, sit back if anybody has any further questions and stuff like that.
Thank you. Cool. And everyone, be sure to follow us on Hustle on Instagram or Facebook in order to keep up with the next round of series. As we said, we're catering it to the current pandemic and best ways that you can utilize marketing for your business right now. So look out for those topics. It should be out by the end of the week. And be safe and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah. So I'll still kind of sit back for a couple of minutes for any other questions that you might have.
Yes, quick question. Could
Sure.
you discuss what you meant by when you were saying evergreen content? Every time you said it, I thought E-green.
That's funny. That's hilarious. So, all right. So evergreen content, what that is essentially is about, it's really determines about relevancy. Okay.
Mhm.
So when I talk about curated content versus things that are documented, right? Basically, evergreen is something that you can create that no matter when it happens, it's about when it's relevant again and not the timeliness of it. All right.
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, so there's a perfect example that came up a couple of weeks ago for North Carolina in particular. Super Tuesday happened a few weeks ago, right? And if you knew you had a new product that you wanted to roll out and you wanted to kind of engage people, right? You might say, hey, I have this new product. We need to decide if we want to make it black or blue, right? Using that content, even though it could be timely because it's something that you're rolling out, But the fact that you are gonna not saying it's Super Tuesday, do this, you're using the theme of Super Tuesday in order to tell people to vote for this color or that color. Because
Okay.
people's mind is already thinking about voting in
Right.
that moment, right? So when you're looking at the content that you've created over time, right, and essentially that you'll have a library of content that you'll kind of be able to refer back to. If something happens and there's like a keyword that's something that, you know, you're talking about cleanliness or something like that, you know, being that we're, you know, everyone's home and stuff like that, and, you know, washing your hands is a must, right? If the word cleanness comes up, you know, and you have a piece of content that uses that, that discusses that, putting that back out is now, you know, relevant in that moment, right? It's just something that necessarily doesn't expire based off of the time that it's used. It's more about something that can just be used, you know, no matter when, and it will always kind of feel fresh. Essentially what Evergreen is what I meant.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? I'm here. I got time. Anyone else? All right. So if that's not, I mean, if that's everybody. Again, I'm gonna put my email in here. I might as well. Hello. Excuse me. I'm just gonna write my email in here. So to make sure double check, make sure I'm right to the right.
And Eric, I see you gave me a task for 12 noon tomorrow. So you'll hit me up about that?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I keep thinking today's Tuesday and not Wednesday, but that's my fault.
Nope.
All right. Man, but I really do appreciate everybody who came out. I will holler at you guys later.
Bye.